Um, in regards to the question of what can be done next on Syria, I feel trapped between two sides of my identity. That is my Turkish upbringing and British education. My Turkish upbringing means that let's go do something. That's an urge that we share a lot. And my British education makes me say, no, that's complicated. Let's not do anything. It's better to just watch. So I'll see if I can balance this yin and yang that always fights in me in this question. But in regards to what Turkey can deliver tangibly and concretely in the next phase of addressing the Syria crisis, I think the answer to that lies in a critical analysis of the tangible things Turkey has done on Syria over the last 4 years. Not necessarily macro level discussions on Turkish foreign policy and AKP vision, but really pretty much the nitty-gritty of what Turkey has delivered or couldn't deliver on Syria. I think we can break down to pretty much to three distinct phases. In phase one of Turkish response, and particularly the first 8-9 months, even up to 10-11 months of the crisis, we saw Foreign Minister Davutoglu, Prime Minister Erdogan really pushing the Turkish soft power capital, personal relationships, and the Syrian rapprochement, which they've been working on quite a lot previously, trying to prevent the crisis, trying to prevent certain developments and pass packages and reform and etc., which didn't bear any fruit. So there actually we have seen the limits of Turkish soft power not being able to translate into hard power. It's one thing that people in the region like Turkey and watch Turkish soap operas and come to Turkey for holidays. It's another thing that Turkish foreign policy preferences are upheld, etc. In the second phase of Turkish response, we have seen increasing and gradual support to opposition because it was unsustainable to maintain that neutral role of trying to believe that Turkish soft power might prevent certain developments. Turkey eventually had to take sides, and it did took a quite strong turn at that level. In the political formation aspect of opposition support, I think Turkey has tried desperately over the last 3-4 years to develop a viable, sensible opposition alternative through its own networks and through its work with various international and regional actors. To what extent we have all succeeded in trying to actually save us from this bipolarity of either Assad or destruction in Syria, which is a discourse that we're even now settling in, as if we now have two options only again. I think a lot of people tried, and Turkey have tried that, but it didn't really bear fruit, which goes to show that outside involvement might not necessarily undo decades of oppressive regime strategies to defragment any political opposition, and that task is yet to remain. And military support Turkey has given has evolved at different phases and different stages. It moved on at certain levels from being a blind eye active supporter to certain transactions to gradually allowing and directly being involved with various militant networks in small arms, as well as training and intelligence sharing. But at the third phase of Turkish attempts on Syria, particularly the last 10 months, we are actually seeing self-protection being the most dominant theme and untangling itself, which is counterintuitive, but so many of the steps are there. For example, we have seen how the security threat to Turkey has increased with attacks in Turkey. We have seen how Turkey found itself, because of its general Middle Eastern foreign policy tensions, being grouped in a particular Muslim Brotherhood Sunni bloc, which Turkey has been desperate to get away from in perception, except bashing Egypt publicly. We are trying to untangle ourselves from that. And this association with particular militant groups and the close cooperation with Turkey and the US and European governments, which was highlighted by the Danish foreign minister on dealing with particularly European and Western jihadists, is actually really strong. Turkey has deported more than 1,000 people already, but it can only count upon intelligence that comes from countries of origin that can actually guide Turkey to deport, because more than 35 million tourists visited Turkey last year. So the fact that we have 900 kilometers long border, unless there's advanced intelligence, Turkey has no way of assessing who's a jihadi or not when they land at the airports. But the domestic pressure of it, which is a really important side to it, not necessarily merely the political chaos in Turkey, which limits government's foreign policy ambitions, but vast majority of Turkish voters, including AKP supporters, do not want Turkey being entangled into Syria further. In fact, the issue of Syrian refugees is definitely more worrying than it seems. At least there are some positivity or strong government pressure on media, so some bad things are actually kept at a certain level on this issue of Syrian refugees. But at the same time, Turkish voters do not want Turkey to be involved. They do want Turkey to be untangled, and government is responding to that. So what can, on the basis of that, what can Turkey do? I think if Turkish ambitions have been found wanting, which is very true, the Turkish place in the Syria conversation and overall Middle East is also proven to be non-negotiable and really important too. So perhaps Turkey could not deliver what it aspired to, but it has placed itself as a non-negotiable partner on so many issues, and Syria is one of them. I think we can break that down to three quick areas. One is diplomatically. I think Turkey unilaterally cannot act. Nobody is really able to do anything unilaterally on this, but I think in a concerted effort, Turkey could play a major role. What I mean by that is, we have seen how Turkish-Iranian relations went pear-shaped under Ahmadinejad during the Arab Spring, particularly 2011 and 13, and how the Rouhani era is actually bringing some sort of closeness again, which is a lot more problematic than it looks like as usual. However, Turkey is still in a great position of not being able to just speak to Iran, but also Russia, which somehow it maintained good relations with, although often keeping quiet about Syria and ignoring harsh comments on Russia in public statements as well. Obviously, Turkish relations with Qatar is still there, and Saudi relations, even though Qatar, Turkey, Saudi triangle is more precarious than it seems, and Turkish switch to GCC, the Gulf countries have been a lot more limited than it seems. However, Turkey is still able to hold that card and still hold the card of being a NATO member and a European Union aspiring, though it will never happen, that's my pessimism, but also a US ally, troubled ally of sorts. Also, Turkey is pursuing another term as at the UN Security Council as a temporary member. The signs are it might very well happen again, and if this happens, it brings up a whole another voting power at the UNC towards a resolution. Secondly, within Syria, I think the immediate role Turkey can play would be stabilization. In terms of a ceasefire, not only as a diplomatic effort at all these different networks, Turkey can have a clout, but within the limited amount of networks within Syria, which Turkey actually can force, coerce, or kindly request for a ceasefire. And I think we do need that a wide range of actors speaking to their own networks for a ceasefire more than anything, and Turkey could deliver that. Secondly, dealing with growing foreign fighters, which is really not good for Syria, not for anybody. Turkey can do a lot. Tightening border control, it is pushing through. They are building a cement wall, which is a bit pointless in certain parts of it, but there is a lot more actual attention on the border risk. But Turkey can, if it wants to, and there's a reason why it cannot too much, can limit flow of weapons, flow of funds, and not human trafficking, but human movement to a certain extent if there is a concerted effort regionally and globally to address these. But Turkey is also afraid of coming too harsh on some of these militant networks within Syria that are closer to the radical end of it because of its own security perception. It does not want these militant groups all of a sudden see Turkey as also an enemy, and thus doesn't want to attract more violence towards itself. We have seen a really diplomatic but silent shift in Turkey's engagement with Syrian Kurds, which is actually an important element in stabilization that Turkey can contribute to, just like how change in Turkish policy on Iraq and engagement with Kurdistan regional government meant a lot. There's increasing direct talks between Turkey and PYD, and there's increasing mutual understanding that Turkey's red line isn't necessarily about a semi-autonomous Kurdish region in Syria, but it is about its own terror perception with PKK, and PYD perhaps could come to a similar understanding with Turkey that KRG has. Thirdly, I think the biggest Turkish place will be showing itself in reconstruction and construction of Syria, both in terms of being the border within which all the supplies can go through, whether humanitarian aid, whether the basic commodities, or whether reconstruction of the roads and infrastructure. I think the Turkish companies and Turkish government and official aid agency, which has seen, I think, some 400% increase in foreign aid over the last 5 years, will actually deliver a lot more because the moving of Syrian hosts, as we call them, not refugees, because of a careful wording of not enabling a prolonged state, Turkey is rather keen to actually move on to reconstruction of Syria. So I think, as a punchline, what we have seen is that Turkey always punches above its weight, and it comes with our cultural persona. But I think in the process, Turkey also delivers a lot of good things. And when it comes to Syria, it can play this really major constructor role as part of a regional and global concerted effort.